The night was eerily silent, the kind of stillness that made every little sound feel louder, more urgent. The moon hung high in the sky, casting silver light over the vast estate. The billionaire, Alexander Carter, had always prided himself on his keen instincts. It was those very instincts that had helped him build his empire from the ground up. But tonight, they stirred in a different way. A sense of unease settled in his chest as he stood by the large window of his study, looking out at the endless stretch of his property. Then he heard it, a scream, high-pitched, desperate, and unmistakably coming from somewhere within the estate grounds. His grip tightened around the glass of whiskey he had been holding. He wasn't a man easily rattled, but something about that scream sent a chill down his spine. He knew every person who worked for him, from the business executives in his towering office building to the groundskeepers who tended to his estate, and he knew that voice. It belonged to a child. Without a second thought, Alexander set down his glass and moved swiftly toward the door. His heart pounded against his ribs as he stepped out into the cool night air, his sharp eyes scanning the dimly lit gardens. Another cry echoed through the darkness. "Help! Please, someone help me!" It was coming from the small cottage at the edge of the property, the gardener's quarters. Alexander didn't hesitate. He broke into a run, his expensive leather shoes crunching against the gravel path. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and night-blooming flowers. But none of that mattered now. The only thing on his mind was getting to the source of that cry. As he approached the modest home, he saw the front door was slightly ajar, swinging with the faint breeze. His breath quickened. Something was wrong. Pushing the door open fully, Alexander stepped inside. The dim glow of a single lamp illuminated the small living space. His gaze darted around, searching for the girl, and then he saw her. Sophie, the gardener's daughter. She stood in the middle of the room, trembling, her wide, terrified eyes fixed on something or someone in the shadows. Alexander followed, her gaze, his body tensing as he prepared himself for whatever or whoever was lurking there. What he saw made his blood run cold. Sophie's small frame shook as she clutched the hem of her nightdress. Her wide, fearful eyes locked on the dark corner of the room. Her breath came in short gasps, and Alexander could hear the faintest whimper escape her lips. He followed her gaze, his body tensed, ready for whatever danger lay ahead. Then, from the shadows, came a low, ragged sound. Breathing, Alexander's jaw clenched. He took a slow step forward, his sharp eyes scanning the dimly lit space. "Who's there?" His voice was steady, but inside, he felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. No answer, but then, a movement, a shadow shifting, just enough to catch the light from the flickering lamp. Alexander's instincts screamed at him. Something was wrong. Sophie whimpered, her hands gripping the fabric of her dress even tighter. "He was trying to get in," she whispered, barely audible. "I woke up and I heard—" She choked on her words, glancing at the window, which was slightly open. The curtain fluttered gently in the night breeze. Alexander's pulse quickened. Someone had tried to break in. He moved swiftly, reaching for the nearest light switch. The room flooded with light, and the shadows peeled away, revealing the truth. There was no one in the corner. But the window told a different story. The lock had been broken, the wooden frame slightly splintered. Someone had forced it open. The air inside still carried the chill of the night. Sophie wasn't imagining things. Alexander turned back to her, his sharp mind already assessing the situation. "Sophie, did you see who it was?" She shook her head quickly. "I woke up because I heard something outside. Footsteps. I thought it was my dad coming home late from work. But then I heard the window. Her voice trembled. I saw a hand push it open. A flicker of rage burned in Alexander's chest. His estate was one of the safest places in the city. Gated, monitored, and protected. How had someone managed to get this close without being caught? He knelt in front of Sophie, his voice softer now. "Where is your father?" She bit her lip, shifting uneasily. He went into town for a few hours. He said he'd be back before midnight." She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was nearly 1 in the morning. Alexander exhaled sharply. That meant Sophie had been alone when this happened. Then, suddenly, something caught his attention. A faint mark on the wooden floor near the window. He moved closer, inspecting it. A partial footprint. Whoever had been here had stepped in something before entering. Alexander straightened. "Stay here," he told Sophie firmly. He moved to the front door and stepped outside, his keen eyes scanning the garden. The wind had picked up slightly, rustling the leaves, but beneath that, he could hear something else. Movement. Not far from the gardener's cottage, near the hedges lining the estate, a figure moved in the darkness. Alexander's body stiffened. He wasn't the kind of man to back down from a threat. Whoever had tried to break in had made a grave mistake coming onto his property. He moved swiftly, his footsteps silent on the damp grass. The figure ahead turned slightly, as if sensing they were being watched. Then, without warning, they bolted. Alexander took off after them. The chase was quick and silent. The only sounds the rapid footsteps crunching against the ground. The intruder was fast, but Alexander was faster. Years of discipline, sharp instincts, and an unshakable will had made him the man he was today. As they neared the edge of the estate, the intruder made a desperate move, trying to climb over the stone wall, but Alexander was already there. With a forceful grip, he grabbed the intruder's jacket, yanking them back down. The person stumbled, falling hard against the ground. Before they could react, Alexander pinned them down. His voice, a low, dangerous growl. "Who are you?" The figure squirmed, but Alexander could feel how frail they were beneath his grip. Not a professional, not even someone strong enough to put up a real fight. Then the hood fell back, revealing a face. Young, no older than 17. A boy. Alexander's brows furrowed. "Who sent you?" The boy's chest heaved as he stared up at him. His face, a mixture of fear and defiance. I wasn't gonna hurt her," he stammered. "I swear." Alexander's grip didn't loosen. "Then why were you trying to break into her room?" The boy swallowed hard, his hands trembling. "I wasn't trying to hurt her," he repeated, more desperate this time. "I needed to warn her." Alexander's sharp gaze bore into him. "Warn her about what?" The boy's lips parted as if to speak, but then he hesitated, glancing around nervously. His body was tense, like he was afraid of something far worse than getting caught. Then, in a hushed, trembling voice, he said, "She's in danger." Alexander's jaw clenched. "From who?" The boy hesitated again, his fear evident in his eyes. He opened his mouth to answer, but before he could, a loud sound shattered the silence. A gunshot. Alexander's heart lurched. In an instant, he ducked, shielding. The boy instinctively. The shot had come from outside the estate, from somewhere in the darkness beyond the wall. Whoever this boy was, whoever he had been running from, they had just made it clear. They weren't going to let him talk. The shot echoed through the night, sharp and unmistakable. Alexander's instincts kicked in as he pulled the boy closer, shielding him from any potential follow-up attack. His mind raced. Someone had fired that shot deliberately, either as a warning or as an attempt to silence the boy for good. Either way, it meant only one thing. They were being watched. The boy was shaking, his breath ragged and uneven. "They found me," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "They know I'm here." Alexander's grip tightened on his shoulder. "Who are they?" The boy hesitated, but the fear in his eyes was real. "I don't know their names, but they don't want me talking. They don't want anyone knowing what I saw." He swallowed hard. "Sophie is in danger because of them." Alexander didn't have time for half answers. He needed the full truth, and he needed it now. "Tell me everything, right now." The boy exhaled shakily, still glancing around as if expecting another shot to come. "I work at the docks," he started. "Late shifts, mostly cleaning up. One night I saw something I wasn't supposed to. Some men. They were unloading boxes from a truck, but it was all hush-hush. No paperwork, no security checks. When I got closer, I saw what was inside." His voice dropped. "They were smuggling something big." Alexander's eyes narrowed. "And what does this have to do with Sophie?" The boy's face twisted with guilt. "I recognized one of the men," he admitted. "It was her father." Alexander's stomach dropped. The gardener, a man who had worked on this estate for years, who was trusted, who had a daughter who screamed for help in the middle of the night. The pieces started to click together. "They saw me watching." The boy continued. "They chased me, tried to grab me, but I got away. Since then, I've been hiding. But tonight, I overheard something. I heard them say that Sophie's father messed up, that he put them all in danger. And when that happens, they make people disappear." His voice shook. "They were coming for him. And if they couldn't find him, they were going to use Sophie to get to him." Alexander's blood turned cold. Sophie. She was still inside the cottage, unaware of just how much danger she was in. Without another word, Alexander pulled the boy to his feet. "We have to move." He didn't wait for a response. He was already running back toward the cottage, his heart pounding harder with every step. If what the boy was saying was true, then Sophie wasn't just a scared child in the night. She was a target, and whoever was after her father wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. As they neared the small house, Alexander's sharp eyes scanned the surroundings. Everything looked quiet, too quiet. Then he saw it, a dark figure moving toward the front door. Adrenaline surged through him. He didn't think, he just acted. With speed and precision, he sprinted forward, reaching the figure just as they placed a hand on the door handle. Alexander grabbed them by the collar, yanking them back before they could enter. The man stumbled, but Alexander didn't give him a chance to react. A swift punch sent the intruder crashing to the ground. The man groaned, clutching his jaw, but Alexander wasn't done. He knelt beside him, his voice dangerously low. "Who sent you?" The man spat blood onto the dirt, smirking through the pain. "Doesn't matter," he muttered. "It's too late." Alexander's gut twisted. He turned toward the cottage. The door was open. Sophie was gone. Panic shot through him, but he didn't let it take control. He grabbed the man by the shirt, shaking him hard. "Where is she?" The man chuckled darkly. "They took her. Your little hero act was too slow." Alexander didn't hesitate. He knocked the man out cold with a single blow and turned to the boy. "Stay here," he ordered. "Call for security. Now." Then he ran. His mind was a storm of calculations, trying to piece together where they would take her. If they needed her as leverage, they wouldn't hurt her. Yet, that meant they needed a secure place, somewhere hidden, but close enough to move fast. Then it hit him. The old storage shed near the back of the estate. His legs burned as he sprinted across the property. The moment he reached the shed, he heard a muffled cry from inside. Sophie. Alexander didn't slow down. He slammed into the door with full force, breaking it open. Inside, 2 men were standing over the terrified girl, who was tied to a chair, her eyes wet with tears. They turned at the sound of the door crashing open, but they never got a chance to react. Alexander was on them in seconds. A hard kick sent the first man stumbling into the wall. The second lunged at him, but Alexander dodged effortlessly, delivering a sharp blow to his ribs. The man collapsed, gasping for air. Sophie let out a sob of relief. Mr. Carter. He didn't waste a second. He untied her quickly, his hands steady, despite the rage boiling inside him. Are you hurt? She shook her head, still shaking. They said they were going to make my dad pay. Alexander's jaw clenched. He wouldn't let that happen. Sirens wailed in the distance. His security team had responded. Within minutes, the estate was swarming with guards, and the intruders were dragged away, their threats falling on deaf ears. Sophie clung to Alexander's hand, her small fingers tightening around his. What? About my dad? She whispered. Alexander exhaled, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I'll take care of it, and he did. By the next morning, Sophie's father was found, terrified and regretful. He had made a mistake, but Alexander wasn't one to abandon those who had served him faithfully. With his influence, he ensured the criminals were brought to justice, their operation dismantled before it could do more harm. Sophie was safe, and as Alexander stood by his window that evening, looking out at the estate once more, he realized something. For years he had built walls around his property, around his heart, but that night, when he heard Sophie's cry for help, something had changed. Money and power had given him everything, but protecting the people who truly mattered, that was priceless.